بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والجنة للموحدين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا وعظيمنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا Amma ba'du, all praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the choicest of blessings and salutations upon our Master Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We pray that our brothers and sisters are all doing well, and we'd like to encourage once again that all brothers and sisters try to log in as early as you possibly can, so that as soon as I log in we are able to start, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. This is class number 8, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and what I'd like to do is to recap on class 7 to see what our brothers and sisters can remember of that class. In our previous class we spoke about two qullas. We did not reach any conclusive measurement for what exactly two qullas would be in terms of liters, and the reason for that was it was never very clear from the outset exactly how well, it's clear how our scholars reached 500 ritals, and we accept that to be the official view within the Shafi'i school, that two qullas equals 500 ritals. However, we said that those conversions were very problematic from the very beginning because we don't know how they were made. We said that the qullas is a measurement of volume, as how the mud is a measurement of volume, as how the sa' is a measurement of volume. And we stated that the ritl predominantly is a measurement of weight. A ritl in the olden times, you were to find them in a museum, I don't know if I mentioned this, but they would look exactly like a weight that would be placed on one side of the scale to measure something on the other side. So I would buy one ritl of flour, or two ritls of flour, or wheat, or barley, whatever the case may be. So what they did was they filled a mud or a saw with a commodity, sometimes wheat, sometimes barley, we don't know what they used. They filled volume and poured volume over into a scale to get a measurement of how many ritls this volume would be. And that happened very late. I need to open my chat quickly because I have some questions. If you remember the answers to these questions, I will be very happy. Here we go. Tamam. So I mentioned that Ibn Jurayj originally determined a qulla, one qulla, to equal two qirbas, qirbatain wa shay. Alright? Al-Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, how much? About 50 or 60 years later, died 204, he determined that if Ibn Jurayj said that one qulla equals to two qurbas wa shay, qirbatain wa shay, then two qullas will be 5 qirab. Qirba was also a measurement of a volume in terms of how liquids would be measured. So, two qirbas and something, Imam Shafi took something and understood it to be less than half. Because the Arabs, if, in other words, it was less than 2.5. Had it been more than 2.5, then Ibn Jurayj would have said that one kulla equals 3 qirab except a certain amount. Like if I want to say quarter to 3 in Arabic, I won't say that the sa'a is الثانية وخمس وأربعين دقيقة. I will say ساعة ثالثة وثلاثة إلا ربع. Right? So we say ثلاثة إلا ربع, or ثلث إلا ربع. So similarly, if it was more than 2.5, you would have said 3 except, but he just said 2 and something, which means at maximum it could have been 2.5 qirbas. Imam Shafi took 2.5, he said that 2 qullas is 5 qirab. Then I said, in which year did scholars actually convert a qirba into ritls? I mentioned this in my last dars. If somebody can actually, if anyone remembers it, Yani, it will mean a lot. But I see many of you have not yet logged in. I'm giving you a second. I'm assuming that there's a delay or that you are. No. So I assume you don't know. You don't recall at least. I said that Abu Ubaid ibn Harbawai, Qadi Qudat Misr, as well as Ibrahim bin Jabir. What is you? How do you become Ibrahim bin Jabir?
My father is Jabir.
One of our students in class here with us today, mashallah, first time he's joining us, he's Ibrahim bin Jabir. Ibrahim bin Jabir passed away in 310 and Abu Ubaidah ibn Harbawi passed away in 320. So we're speaking about 100 years after Imam Shafi rahimahullah ta'ala. They stipulated that one qirba equals 100 rittles. How they did that conversion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. But what we do know is that the concept of that volume equaling mass, and 1 liter of volume equaling 1 kilograms of mass, only happens when I take, if I fill that liter container, which is volume, with water at room temperature, 4 degrees exactly. 4 degrees room temperature water, 1 liter equals 1 kilogram. So volume equals mass only with liquids. At here we don't know what they took. In other words, they may have taken wheat, they may have taken barley, they may have taken flour, they may have taken daqiq, they may have, Allahu alam what they took to fill up 1 qirba, and then they weighed that to be 100 rittles. Now when I come today and I want to determine what the measurement is, I have to take 100 rittles and convert it back from weight to volume. And that's where the complication came in. That's where the challenges, that's where we faced a whole lot of challenges. Ala kulli hal, without repeating that lesson and getting into much details, I just wanted to recap on that. Further, we got into a discussion regarding wazn and kayl and miqyas and understanding these concepts very well, because they will be coming again. And we said that 2 qullas equals 500 little Baghdadis, 1 little Baghdadi equals 128 and 4/7 of a dirham, 128 and 4/7 of a dirham equal times 2.750, which is the dirham's weight in grams, equals 382.5 grams. And thus we knew that 1 little Baghdadi equals 382.5 grams. Now, and then if I take 500 little Baghdadis times 382.5 grams, it gives me a weight of 191.25 kilograms. These are the measurements that Dr. Muhammad Najmuddin al-Kurdi calculated within his book Al-Maqadir al-Shar'iyya that we spoke about, and Dr. Ali Juma'a in his book has the same measurement. So 191 grams, if we do the assumption that 191 grams equal 191 liters, we came to the fact that 2 qullas would be 191 liters. However, the scholars gave us a different measurement, and they said that if you take 1 dhira wa rub times 1 dhira wa rub times 1 dhira wa rub, which would be width times length times depth, let's call it a square dhira wa rub, right, equals the amount of water that would take 2 qullas. And when I said in the Umdah, when Shaykh Nuh Hamim Kala translated the Umdah, he quoted some of his mashayikh that did this measurement. They took 1 dhira wa rub by 1 dhira wa rub by 1 dhira wa rub, and they came to 216 liters. And therefore we said that 2 qullas is going to be between 191 liters and 216 liters. My problem with that was that if we look at a dhira in terms of the way our Shafi ulama described it, Muhammad Najmuddin as well as Dr. Ali Juma'a, to them a dhira equals 61 centimeters, whereas Dr. Nuh Hamim Kaladim calculated the dhira to be 48 centimeters. So we're speaking about a cube or a container, a block container, murabba, of the official view in the Shafi'i madhab supposed to be 77 centimeters on each side, and that would come much more than 216 liters. Number one. Number two is what I did not mention in my previous class was the fact that some of the students of our teacher Sayyidi Al-Habib Umar have adopted the view that the dhira is around between roughly 46 centimeters, between 46 and 48, and they came to a similar amount of 200 liters for kullatain. Nonetheless, it's going to be between these amounts. In the Hanafi school, a dhira would be 46 centimeters. In the Hanafi school, however, it's supposed to be 61.8 centimeters. Ahlan bi Sayyid. Barakallah feekum Sayyidi. Sayyidi, afwan.
على ترتيبك الشيخ ما بقطع.
نعم. عندكم سيدي كم تقيس الذراع بسنتيمتر؟
الذراع 3 أذرع تقريبا 3 متر. متر ونصف.
متر ونصف.
الذراع 3 أذرع
نعم.
متر ونصف
تقريبا.
هذا اللي ينص عليه بعض العلماء المعاصرين.
تمام سيدي. بارك الله. نعم. So that's our discussion regarding the qullatain, and we have covered that, alhamdulillah. We said now ultimately between 191 to 16 is very difficult to determine exactly what it's going to be for the reasons that I mentioned to you. My chat is very quiet. This is not like a normal class. Is everybody with me? Marhaba, marhaba, marhaba. Tamam. So today's discussion, inshallah ta'ala, is what? These are we're going to looking at. We're going to be looking at this. We must cover them all because we are lagging behind with work. Number one was, oh yes, Sidi Abul Hasanain, I don't know if he's with us today, but he was asking about a jirya. It's called jirya or jarya. How does one determine what is qalil and kathir in terms of a jirya? So remember, marhaban Sidi. So we said that when I asked the question last week, I said what I do recall is that when they speak about a jirya, they speak about the distance from one side of the bank to the other side of the bank. But in determining, and then also the jirya is that if you assume in the fuqaha in that tamawuj, when it becomes ripples or waves, then that ripple that you're looking at, that's a jirya. If you were to picture water becoming ripples or waves, then each wave is a jirya, that section, in terms of width and then length and width now. However, when wanting to determine what exactly is, if a jirya is going to be qalil or kathir, there's a way in which they calculated it, and Sidi Abul Hasanain actually sent me the text from Mughni al-Muhtaj. And ultimately what that text comes down to, if I can just find the text that he sent me, I can read it for you all and then No. So he said that ويعرف كون الجرية كلتين بأن تمسح ويجعل الحاصل ميزانا. So the word mizan is going to be important. I'm going to explain what mizan means in a moment. ثم يؤخذ قدر عمق الجرية ويضرب في قدر طولها ثم الحاصل في قدر عرضها بعد بسط الأقدار من مخرج الربع لوجوده في مقدار الكلتين في المربع. فمسح الكلتين بأن تضرب ذراعا وربعا طولا في مثلهما عرضا في مثلهما عمقا يحصل 150 وهي الميزان. نعم. So the discussion is, if you look at it for the first time, it may sound a bit complicated, but I'll give you the gist of what it is. It comes down to the masaha that we're speaking about. So they call a mizan, which literally translates as a balance. The balance of two kullas is going to be 125. And how they come to 125, remember, a dhira wa rub, by a dhira wa rub, so that's depth, this is width or length, and then width the same. So dhira wa rub, dhira wa rub, dhira wa rub. 1 1/4 dhiras means that I'm dividing the dhira into quarters. So 1 dhira and rub equals how many quarters? 1 dhira in rub equals how many quarters? 5. So 5 by 5 by 5 gives you 125. 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 5 gives you 125. Right? Now, that balance of 125, that mizan, could take various forms and various shapes. So it could be a box of 5 by 5 by 5, and 5 quarters of a dhira by 5 quarters of a dhira by 5 quarters of a dhira. Or that box can take different shapes. By way of example, I'm just thinking what would be easy now to calculate. Let's say a dhira wa nus. 1.5 dhiras would be 6 quarters. So I can take 6 quarters by 6 quarters. So 6 by 6. So the height can be 6, the width can be 6. Then the depth will have to be how much? The depth will have to be 3 quarters of a dhira. So I can say 6 by 6 by 3. That should give me 125 if I'm not mistaken. So you can play around to get the mizan of 125. So you'll have to do some estimation. The water that is existing, what's the width of the river or the bank, wherever the water is flowing, times the jirya that I'm looking at, what's its depth, what's its width, what is its length. And if it comes to more than 125 in terms of the quarters of the dhira that I've been using, that's a mizan. If it's more than a mizan, khalas, it's considered to be kathir, otherwise qalil. If you got that, alhamdulillah. If you didn't, ask Sidi Nadir Abul Hasanain to explain it to you in the group. But we must move on because we've just recapped with some new masail and almost half of the time is gone. So what we're looking at today is as-suwar al-mustathnat min al-najasa al-waqi'a fil ma. We did cover this last week. I want to touch on it briefly again. Then there's a masala of taghtiyatul ina, and the last masala is ishtiba'u ahad al-ina'aini bi najasin. So our author rahimahullah ta'ala, he says الصور المستثنات من النجاسة الواقية في الماء. يقول المصنف رحمه الله: ودونهما ينجس بمجرد ملاقة النجاسة وإن لم يتغير إلا أن يقع فيه نجس لا يراه البصر أو ميتة لا دم لها سائل كذباب ونحوه فلا يضر وسواء الجاري والراكد. ودونهما يعني ودون الكلتين. الماء الذي هو دون كلتين ينجس، يصير الماء الذي هو دون كلتين نجسا بمجرد ملاقة النجاسة. يعني قطرة واحدة من البول وقعت في الماء الذي هو دون الكلتين يصير الماء نجسا وإن لم يتغير. لو تغير الماء أم لا، يصير الماء نجسا إذا كانت دون الكلتين إلا أن يقع فيه نجس. That مسألة we covered, right? The one I want to look at here: يقع فيه نجس لا يراه البصر، يعني لا يدركه الطرف, unless such amount of najasa falls into water which is less than 2 qullas that the eye cannot see. يعني البصر المعتدل. أو ميتة لا دم لها سائل, or such a insect or animal that has no flowing blood. كذباب ونحوه, like a fly or the like of a fly, فلا يضر. That will not harm the status of the water. Technically it's najis, or the insect is going to be najas. ميتة is najas, لكن لا دم لها سائل فلا يضر. وسواء الجاري والراكد. تمام. Let's look at this. لا يدركه طرف. Here there is اختلاف على المذهب. I wanted to use this as an opportunity, even though our time is tight, and even though we don't have much time to explain the concept of اختلاف على المذهب. Al-Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, in his Minhaj, which is our ultimate text that you and I need to, that we are aiming to study and read, and he has different terminologies to refer to different types of ikhtilaf. The famous terminologies is that Imam Shafi rahimahullah ta'ala has 2 qawls on a mas'ala. So when he refers to one qawl being rajih and another being marjuh, he will say adhar and mashhur. If he says fil adhar, then it means in the rajih of 2 qawls. Fil mashhur, the rajih of 2 qawls. The difference is when he says adhar, it means that the qawl rajih is 1, while the opposing view of adhar is marjuh, لكن هو قوي في نفسه. Right? As for مشهور, then it means that the khilaf, the qawl rajih is qawi, and the opposite is غير قوي. يعني more details at another time. I just want to. So he uses two terms. So in other words, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala, when he has two opposing qawls, they would be, both of them would be strong, but one is aqwa, qawi and aqwa. And sometimes he has two qawls, the one is qawi and the other one is غير qawi. Right? When he determines the rajih, when it's a qawl aqwa versus a qawl qawi, he uses the term fil adhar. If it's a qawl qawi versus a qawl غير qawi, he uses the term fil mashhur, al-qawl al-mashhur. As for the views of the ashab al-hujur, they call ashab al-hujur because the opinions that they contributed to the madhab is called wujuh, singular wajh. When it's two opposing wajhs, wajhain of the ashab, أحدهما قوي والآخر أقوى, يقول في الأصح, يعني مقابل الأصح, the view which is opposing the asah, the marjuh view, would be qawi. It's still a strong view, but it's not the strongest view. And then you would use sahih when there's also two opposing wajhs, wajhain by the ashab, where the one is qawi and the other is da'if. So he says sahih, meaning the other is غير sahih. Now it's not the time to get into that detail, but just briefly. However, there's times that Imam Nawawi rahimahullah says ala al-madhab. When he says ala al-madhab, then the يعني يشير إلى اختلاف الأصحاب في حكاية المذهب. He's indicating to how the Ashab al-Hujud differed in the way they transmitted the madhab from Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. Now, this لا يدركه طرف مسألة is one of those examples where the Ashab al-Hujud differed in the manner in which they transmitted the madhab from Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. So first of all, when I tell you اختلاف على المذهب, then you should appreciate that there are two views. The most simplest explanation, there are two views regarding najasa لا يدركها طرف, it cannot be seen with the eye. Does it make the water najis or not? The rajih is, as our author states over here, that it does not make the water najis. What book am I looking for now? Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa ashabi wa barik wa sallim. So I want to show you the ikhtilaf. I need to find the ikhtilaf to show it to you. Otherwise, the stuff like this I can't memorize. What are we speaking about? No, ma'foon an. Just give me 1 second, please. Naam, here we go. So each method in manner in which the ashab transmitted the madhab is called a tariq. You know, normally when I teach fiqh, I use a board a lot. When I'm doing something like this, it's very difficult for me to. I should get a pad where I can write and I could actually explain things better. So to explain to you what's happening over here is that the manner in which the students, the followers of Imam Shafi'i, transmitted the madhab from Imam Shafi'i in this regard, they did so in 7 different ways. So one of those 7 ways is the correct way in which the madhab was transmitted. So what is it now? One tariq, one method in which the madhab was transmitted. And we're speaking about najasa that cannot be seen with the eye in relation to it falling into water or coming onto your clothing. So the one method in which the madhab was transmitted, and this is the correct method, is that there are 2 qawls in relation to it falling into water and in relation towards it touching your clothes. Right. And that is what? In other words, Imam Shafi has a qawl that says if what najasa that the eyesight cannot see touches your clothes, there are two qawls. One qawl says that your clothing becomes mutanajjis, or the water becomes mutanajjis. Another qawl says your clothing does not become mutanajjis, or the water does not become mutanajjis. So there are two qawls. And Imam Nawawi, of course, gave tarjih to the qawl that says it does not make your clothing mutanajjis, neither does it make water mutanajjis. Another way in which the madhab was narrated was that Imam Shafi only has one qawl, that najasa, that the vision cannot see, will render water and clothing najis, as one qawl. Now, Ibn Surayj transmitted the madhab like that. Another way in which the madhab was transmitted is Imam Shafi has one qawl in relation to water and clothing, that it renders, it does not, if it najasa allati la tudrikuhu or la yudrikuhu tarf, لا يؤثر لا في الثوب ولا في الماء قولا واحدا. Right? So really, if I just stop over there, we can see now there are three ways. One avenue, Imam Shafi had two qawls whether najasa, that the tarf, the eyesight cannot see, whether it affects water or your clothing. Two qawls. One says yes, one says no. That's the correct way in which the madhab should be transmitted. Other ways in which the madhab was transmitted, some scholars they said Imam Shafi had in relation to water and clothing and najasa that cannot be seen with the eye, one qawl that says it affects the clothing, it affects the water. Others they said no, Imam Shafi has one qawl that says it does not affect the water and it does not affect the clothing. That's three. 7 different possibilities exist over here. I'm not going to get into all 7 of them. That's a discussion when we actually read the Minhaj one day, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. The point is to show you how the Ashabul Hujud differed in the manner in which they transmitted the madhab. Imam Nawawi, of course, stated that the correct transmission of the madhab is Imam Shafi has two qawls regarding clothing and water. One says the najasa that cannot be seen affects it, the other said it does not affect. And based on those two qawls, Imam Nawawi gave tarjih to the qawl that says it does not affect clothing, neither does it affect water. No. I hope that is clear to everyone. So, la yudriku taraf, that's the discussion I want to have over here. Ibn Naqib mentions the rajih qawl of Imam Shafi, illa an yaqa fi najasun, la yarahu al-basar, yani, la yadur al-ma. So, if such a small amount of najasa touches you, falls into water, la yadur. أو ميتة لا دم لها سائل كذباب ونحوه فلا يدور. Here's also اختلاف. This is not قول واحد. On the masala of a mayta that does not have dam sa'il, what do we mean by doesn't have dam sa'il, flowing blood? يعني لا يسيل دمها عند شق عضو منها. If I was to take one of his body parts and rip it, then no blood will flow. Such an insect that has no blood that flows, if I was to break one of his body parts, and while it's alive, if I place that into water, if it falls into water, even though it's dead and it's najis, it won't change the status of water, even if water is less than 2 qullas. The example he gave is a fly. But other things like a fly would be, they use an example of scorpions. I have never played with a scorpion to break a body part to see if there is blood flowing or not. But I'm sure some of you may have. No. Other example they make is a wazagh. What's a wazagh? A gecko. I'm seeing someone wrote gecko here, son. Gecko doesn't have blood flowing. No. However, a snake would have blood. Frogs would have blood. A rat will have blood. And therefore, if they fall into water, they make the water najis. Now, what if I don't know if an animal that fell into my water does it have flowing blood, yes or no? Then I'm allowed to kill such an animal to test whether it has the darura, to determine whether water will become najis or not. And all of this comes from the hadith of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إِذَا وَقَعَ الذُّبَابُ فِي شَرَابِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَلْيَغْمِسْهُ كُلَّهُ ثُمَّ لِيَنْزَعْهُ فإن في أحد جناحيه داء وفي الآخر دواء. ويسي وفي الآخر شفاء. It is said in the left wing of the fly. This is actually one of the hadith that, have any of you heard the name giant ball before? Where's my chat? Giant ball, anyone heard of giant ball before? Giant ball was an Orientalist that attacked our tradition. He wasn't a modernist, he was Orientalist, he wasn't Muslim. That attacked our tradition. So the Orientalist scholars that dedicated their lives to attacking the system of Isnad, as is known by our scholars of Hadith, just very quickly, the Shaykh al-Mustashrikeen was Ignaz Goldziher. Ignaz Goldziher was known as Shaykh al-Mustashrikeen, and even though his works are flawed in so many different ways, his words are like a religious, like it's divine scripture. Even Muslim scholars today studying academics in the West, they read Ignaz Goldziher's work as if it's Ibn Hajar Imam Nawawi speaking. And he, after he passed on, he had a diary. After he passed on, he had a diary. And in his diary he wrote, Dr. Muhammad Mustafa Al-Azami, Allah Yarhamu, who passed away very recently, the world don't know what they lost with the loss of Dr. Muhammad Mustafa Al-Azami. So in one of his responses to Shaykh, he mentioned this. He said that in his Dr. Muhammad Zubair As-Siddiqui, he also has a book on early studies in hadith literature or something of that kind. I'm speaking of many years ago now. He actually saw the diary of Ignaz Goldziher. It was printed like in a very small way. And he said one of the things Goldziher, it was printed post-mortem after his death. He said therein that when he lived among Muslims, he speak about how much he loved the Muslim community and the integrity and what beautiful people they were. He lived in Egypt and the Muslim lands for a long time. And he said that when he saw the high status of hadith, he was a Jew. He said that when he found that he was unable to elevate the status of the Jewish tradition, of its authenticity. This was the Sunnah. When he was unable to raise the status of the Jewish tradition to where the Sunnah is, he had no other choice but to try and attack the Sunnah to bring it down to the level of the Judaism tradition. Ignaz Goldziher. He said it, he wrote it. So now you can see what his objective is from the very beginning. He can't be objective. It's impossible if he himself says, I wanted to bring it down to the level of the traditions within Judaism. And then his student would have been Joseph Schacht, and after Joseph Schacht there was Giant Ball. Giant Ball tried to criticize the entire corpus of the Sunnah through the hadith of the fly. He has a whole book, or a large part of his study is how he takes down the Sunnah because of the hadith of the fly. How can this be? And I'm not sure now if it was scientifically proven that the one wing of a fly holds a disease and the other has a cure. It doesn't even matter to me whether it can be scientifically proven or not. I don't need science to affirm what my Prophet said. Now, so do you have a test? Or is it, you have to test. I mentioned you have to test Fatima. Any creature, insect, like animal, you need to actually, if you're uncertain part of its body, you have to break it, and it will be permissible on account of the darura to determine whether it has blood that flows or not. Now, فلو شككنا في سيل دمها امتحن بجنسها أو امتحن بجنسها فتجرح يعني للحاجة. I think فتجرح. So that animal, that creature will have to be tested to see whether it has blood that flows or not. قاله الغزالي في فتاويه. Now I'm looking for the opposite opinion. The other view in the madhab of force is going to say that an insect that falls into water will render it impure. هذا قول of Imam Shafi على المشهور. So the rajih قول of Imam Shafi says that it won't render water najis. إذ لا دم لها سائل. another qawl of Imam Shafi actually said at will render the water najis. Lakin al-qawl al-mashhur is that it does not, and that's the rajih, and that's what's important to us. The important thing I wanted to mention over here, we must draw a distinction between someone throwing an insect into the water, a fly or a lizard, somebody throwing it into the water, and it falling by itself. When إذا طرحه أحد في الماء يصير الماء نجسا، أما إذا وقع بنفسه لا يصير الماء نجسا. هذا شيء. الشيء الثاني أن هذا الخلاف بين قولي الإمام الشافعي رحمه الله تعالى منحصر في الحيوانات التي تعيش أو تنشأ خارج الماء. أما الحيوانات التي تنشأ من الماء فلا ينجس الماء إذا مات فيها بلا خلاف. An animal that is born from water, some worms or insects, and then it dies in the water, that doesn't render the water najis بلا خلاف. So that's the ميت على دم الأسافل خلاف القولين. And then سواء الجاري والراكد, irrespective whether the water happens to be still standing or whether the water is flowing. On what does Ibn Hajar differ? Yari. Tamam. So I'm going to move on so long and I'll come back to the comments in a moment. On killing the animal. Could be. Allah Alam. If you find the text, send it to us and send it to the group. We can all benefit, inshallah ta'ala. Tamam. The next masala is Taghtiyatul Ina. Our author, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, he then said that another masala said فإن كُثِرَ القليل النجس فبلغ كلتين ولا تغير طهر. If ماء النجس is, I have ماء نجس قليل, and then I add other water to it, بشرط أن يكون ماء, it must be water, but it doesn't matter what type of water. It can be used water, it can be more najis water, it can be changed water, such as what, tea or the like. If I add changed water or used water or najis water to water ma mutanajis, and it reaches more than 2 qullas, 191, between 191 and 216 liters, ولا تغير, and there's no change, tahura, the water is considered to be pure. Now, I'm going to move on. I'm not going to get into more discussion over there. He then said, والمراد بالتغير بالطاهر أو بالنجس إما اللون أو الطعم أو الريح. That masala we also covered already. We spoke about that at length. I'm not going to get into that. ويندب تغطية الإناء, and then he said it's recommended to cover your vessels. هذا من سنة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Why is he mentioning this here? Even though, as far as I know, Imam Nawawi doesn't mention this in the actual minhaj, because it ties into, he's speaking about najasa and the like falling into a vessel, right? And beyond najasa and physical filth that can fall into a vessel, there is unseen bad that can go into a vessel as well, that the Prophet ﷺ spoke of in hadith. Now, so taghtiyatu al-ina, covering vessels. Therefore, he's speaking about it. That's considered to be recommended during the day or during the night, so that nothing harmful can fall into the water that may spoil it, or it can harm the person that is going to be using the water, on the one hand, and on the other hand, as mentioned, for spiritual reasons. So that no darkness or evil or balaya or fitan, or rather unseen evil, can go into the water. And what suffices is that you don't have to cover the entire vessel, but what suffices is to place a stick on it, the likes of a miswak, an oud. Now, the vessel should be covered whether you're sitting by the vessel or not. Whenever the vessel is being left, sunnah is to place something on it. Now, the Prophet ﷺ says, خَمِّرُ الْآنِيَةِ, cover your vessels, وَلَوْ أَنْ, even if you place upon it عودا تعرض عليها عودا. قال الأئمة, the benefit of that is 3. Number one is that the Prophet ﷺ, he said in Sahihain that shaitan cannot settle into a vessel or a receptacle that is covered. No. Or rather he said shaitan cannot untie a siqa wala yakshif ina, and he cannot open. A siqa would be a vessel that you tie with a string, and an ina would be a vessel that you close with a lid. So you cannot untie the string of a siqa or open the lid of a vessel that has been closed or tied. No. Second benefit is the Prophet ﷺ, he said that every year there is a night where waba. Now everybody knows that word waba. What's waba? Waba is a pandemic. We're speaking about sicknesses. There's one night in the year where sicknesses descend from the heavens. There's no vessel on the face of the earth that does not have a covering on it, or a siqa that doesn't have a wika, it's not string closed, except that waba goes into that vessel. No. And the third benefit is that you're protecting it from any najasa that may fall into it. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam. The author here of Fath al-Wahhab, he said that he quoted Al-Imam al-Ramli in his Ghayatul Bayan. Ghayatul Bayan is a commentary on a poem. What poem? Who knows? It's slipping my mind now. I think Ibn Raslan. The Zubad, no. Matn Zubad. Ahsantu. He said there that when you're placing a stick or a pen or a oud, a miswak on a vessel, you must do so with dhikr. Because the secret is that the dhikr with which it was placed will push away all harm from that vessel. So in the Safat Zubad, I think he has two books with the same title. Allahu A'lam. I'm replying to a comment here by Abu Ihsan. You can look into it, inshallah. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, because I haven't been into, I said previously, I'm saying it again, I haven't been into this tradition for a long time now. These books, subhanallah, I used to find enjoyment in memorizing the names of books and the authors and where they came from and so forth and so on. And now it's a good time for me to revise all of these things. And it just shows if you don't remain in touch with the subject, with the science, it leaves you. No. So, in the Safat al-Zubad he said, وَيُسْتَحَبُّ فِي الْأَوَانِ التَّغْطِيَةِ وَلَوْ بِعُودٍ حُطَّ فَوْقَ الْآنِيَةِ. Our Salaf, the Sada al-Ba'alawi, our Mashaykh from the Sada al-Ba'alawi, يعني يتفاخرون بحفظهم للزبد. They used to put a lot of focus in the memorization of the Zubad. Now, the next mas'ala is there's lots of detail to it. And we're going to conclude our discussion, inshallah ta'ala, today with this mas'ala. اشتباه أحد الإناءين بنجس. فلو وقع في أحد الإناءين نجس توضأ من أحدهما باجتهاد وظهور علامة سواء قدر على طاهر بيقين أم لا، فإن تحير أراقهما ويتيمم بلا إعادة، والأعمى يجتهد فإن تحير قلد بصيرا، ولو اشتبه طهور بماء ورد توضأ بكل واحد مرة أو ببول أراقهما وتيمم. And that brings us to the end of our discussion on water. So he said that if najasa falls into one of two vessels, right? Like at my home, I'm catching rainwater, so I have two 1,000 liter tanks next to each other, right? But that's a bad example for this year, because we're speaking about what? We're speaking about less than 2 qullas and 1,000 liters. Each of my tanks are more than 2 qullas. So let's say I have two 50 liter jugs, a 50 liter jug, another 50 liter jug. And then najasa falls into one of them, and then I don't recall which one. That's the ishtibah that we're speaking about. What do you do then? Tawadda'a, he says, min ahadihima bijtihad. You make wudu from one of them with ijtihad. You apply your ijtihad, and then you make wudu from one of them. How you can make ijtihad? We can look at it again. Oh, one thing is jihad, the other thing is dhuhur alama. There's a sign indicating that this is the dirty one and the other one is clean. So those are two things. Irrespective whether you have access to water which is clean biyaqinin am la. What is, in other words, there's a third jug that I know is clean. So even though I have access to it, I can make ijtihad, determine which one is clean of the two, because there's two in front of me, one najis, one is clean. I don't know which is which. Right? I make ijtihad and use one of them, even though there's a third one over there. And the reasoning is really obvious if you think about it, because at the end of the day, this is water and it has value to it. I can't just leave it there forever and never use any of it. I need to determine what's what. سواء قدر على قادر طاهر يقين أم لا. Now, students, when they study the muqaddimah, what are you reading with Sayyid Ahmed now? Muqaddimah. Have you reached this discussion already?
Actually, tomorrow's lesson is...
Tomorrow's lesson. Students who study the muqaddimah, al-Hadramiyya, they engage in a discussion over here. The first thing is that if I just say yes two, one is najas, one's not najas, I just take any one, I make wudu and I go make salah, my wudu is not valid, my salah is not valid, even if it so happens that I chose the right one, I chose the clean one. So I can't just do things without ijtihad. I need to determine. Now, why? Because my ibadah goes back to what? It has to go back to an asl. Or from those asl, it has to go back to my dhan. I can't make wudu with something not knowing if it is clean or not. I can't just do that. So my wudu won't be valid. So, as for me making ijtihad, which is right and which is wrong, they say that for you to go ahead and make ijtihad, there are a number of shurut. So in the Bushra al-Karim and the Muqaddimah Hadramiyya, he mentions a number of shurut. The author of our commentary over here mentions 8. I want to look at 7 of them. Why am I mentioning these shurut now? Because it's part of our fiqh in relation to ishtibah of ina'ain, and we need to cover them. And you're supposed to have covered this already before coming to the Umdah. So for these reasons, I feel it necessary to cover it. And I'm going to go through them very quickly, inshallah. First condition for you to go ahead and make ijtihad. And لِجَوَازِ الْإِجْتِهَاد. I think some of them come in my slide over here. Now, number 1 I have here is أن يكون لكل أصل أصل في التطهير. And each bottle of water should have been such water that can be used for tahara in the first place. If one of them was not, then I don't make, it's not permissible for me to make ijtihad. Why can't I make ijtihad? Because one of them wasn't possible for me to make tathhir with in the first place. So, listen to this. 1 5-liter jug was water, the other 5-liter jug was urine. Of course, it lost its color, taste, and smell, so it looks like water, but it's actually urine. Now, so I can't make ijtihad over there because one of them is not suitable for tahara in the first place. So there is no ijtihad. However, if one bottle was water and the other is rose water. Right? Again, I can't make ijtihad over there because the one bottle could not have been used for tahara in the first place, while the other could have. Why would this be now? Let's just think about it. Because leave it at that, because we'll come to it again. However, if one jug is going to be water and the other is rose water, and I'm not sure which one najasa fell in, I can make ijtihad if I want to drink the water. Now, I can drink rose water that lost its quality, smell and taste. Let's assume I can drink it. So if I can drink it, so both are suitable for drinking, but najasa fell in one of them. So now I can make ijtihad, drink the one and leave the other. But I can't make ijtihad to determine whether I can use it for wudu or not. Everyone with me, right? However, if a person, so I said clean water, there was clean water and urine, I can't make ijtihad because both of them were not suitable for tahara in the first place. Clean water, rose water. Of course, rose water that lost its color, smell and taste. I can't make ijtihad for wudu, for tahara. Why? Because both of them were not suitable for tahara from the beginning. However, were both of them suitable for drinking? Yes, both of them were suitable for drinking if you can drink rose water like that, right? Then I made ijtihad and I determined that bottle A najasa fell into bottle A, but it didn't fall into bottle B. So now I can drink bottle B. Once I am able to drink bottle B, can I now use it to make wudu? Yes or no? Can I make tathir with it? Yes or no? Huh?
No.
Why not?
Based on the same concept Marana mentioned in the first course, one of them never had the asl of making tahara.
No. However, according to Ramli, I can use that for wudu now. I couldn't make ijtihad to determine if that water is clean for wudu because both waters wasn't suitable for tathir in the first place. But I could make the ijtihad for drinking. When I made the ijtihad for drinking and determined that this is the clean water, I could now also use it for tahara according to Ramli, and one would assume that Ibn Hajar held a different view. Why? Because of a qaida fiqhiyya. The qaida fiqhiyya says يغتفر في الدوام ما لا يغتفر في يعني في الابتداء. Or they say يغتفر في الشيء تبعا ما لا يغتفر فيه مقصودا. The famous example of this qaida actually comes about in the month of Ramadan. How does the Ramadan masala work now again? How does the Ramadan masala work now? But every month requires how many witnesses? 2. And Ramadan requires how many witnesses? 1. Ahsanti. So if one person cited the hilal of Ramadan enters. He brings his shahada to a qadi, the qadi accepts his shahada, khalas. If only it was so simple in practice. Like we had massive problems with the moon sightings in our country this year. Somebody brings his testimony to the qadi accepts. Another thing is, something that happened in South Africa this year, there was a lot of claims, we saw the moon, but it grows about stir, but we should appreciate that a sighting means nothing until it's presented to a qadi. A sighting means nothing until the person who sighted comes to a qadi and informs the qadi that he or she sighted the moon, and then the qadi accepts that sighting, and then the qadi makes an announcement. No. So we are now. So one person cited the hilal at the beginning of Ramadan enters. Qadi accepts it, he announced Ramadan enters. Then the Ramadan continues. We fast the 29th day. The evening of the 29th, which is possibly the 30th or the 1st of Shawwal, no moon sighted. We finish Ramadan 30 days. 30 days in, Ramadan can't be more than 30 days. The 1st of Shawwal, there's still no moon to be seen. Right? Now what happens? We technically now entered into Shawwal without the moon being sighted, based on the sighting of one person in the beginning of Ramadan. Usually Shawwal requires two people. So that's an example of يغتفر في الدوام ما لا يغتفر في غيره. I must actually check other examples now that's coming to my mind. One of the books I enjoyed teaching very, very much a few years ago was the أشباه والنظائر of Imam Suyuti رحمه الله تعالى. قواعد فقهية is a beautiful thing to go through. What would be other examples of يغتفر في الدوام? So here he's saying that يغتفر في الشيء تبعا ما لا يغتفر فيه مقصودا. So I couldn't make ijtihad for that water to be used for tathir, for cleansing purposes, as a primary ijtihad. But since I made ijtihad to determine where there's najasa and where there's no najasa for drinking water, and once I determined what is drinking and what is tahir, it then became permissible for me to actually use it for tahara as well, according to Muhammad Ramli. No. So the first thing is that أن يكون لكل من المشتبهين أصل في التطهير. Both jugs has to be suitable for tathir in the first place. That's the first shart. The second shart is that there must be a sign indicating to the one being clean and the other not being clean. Like how? What type of sign? What type of sign? They say you see the traces of a dog, by way of example. So let's say the water became filthy because of a dog drank from one of the jugs, right? And then you go to the jug and you can see that there's still some traces of the dog on this jug and not on that jug. Like what? See some hair, or you see some saliva, or آثار الكلب موجودة هنا وليس هنا. So that's now that fulfills the condition of what أن يكون للعلامة في مجال. Or it happened suddenly after the dog ran away, and when you looked at the two jugs, you saw that there were still ripples in this one that indicates movement, and this one was still, there was ittirab and there was no ittirab. Or you see that they were both the same. A dog came and drank from it, and now you can see that this has less water in and that has the same amount of water. Now, do you get that? Where is this masala now? Anyway, third shart is تعدد المشتبه ابتداء ودواما فلا اجتهاد في واحد ابتداء ودواما. Now, so the next one is that the mushtabih, for you to make ijtihad, has to be two separate jars. The ikhtilaf, I can't make ijtihad if only one jar is mushtabih. What that means is I had the two jars, 5 liters, I was uncertain which one najasa fell into. Then one jug is destroyed. My son comes, he pushes the jug over, all the water runs out, one jug is destroyed, one remains. Can I make ijtihad on that one? No, I can't make ijtihad on that one. What do you mean you can't make ijtihad? It means now that your approach toward that water has to be different. You can't use the approach of ijtihad. You know, such as examples that we made previously, seeing traces or this or that. No. Similarly, they give an example is if one of my sleeves become filthy, najasa falls onto one of my sleeves, and the day and then I say, oh, I don't know what sleeve it was. Was it this sleeve or was it that sleeve? Right? I can't now make ijtihad what sleeve it was and then wash that sleeve. I can't make it. Well, the sleeve is very simple because what can I do? Just wash both and then it's not complicated. No, but you can't make ijtihad over there. Fourth condition is I must know that one of them actually najasa actually fell into one of them. Otherwise it's pointless for me to want to make ijtihad. How do I know that? By a person of integrity tells me or informs me, oh, I saw that najasa fell into one of them. Fifth condition is there must be enough time for you to make ijtihad, wudu and salah. If there isn't enough time for you to make ijtihad and wudu and salah, then and there's no other water for you to use, then what you should do is, by Ibn Hajar, you must make tayammum and then repeat the salah afterwards. The seventh condition is that neither of the water should be harmful. And the eighth condition is that there should be no ta'arud between two people. In other words, if one person of thiqah tells me that the najasa fell in jug A, another person tells me the najasa fell in jug B, and they're both reliable, then I can't make ijtihad over there. Unless one person happens to be much more reliable than the other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. I just wanted to cover those shurut because they are normally covered in the teaching of the muqaddimah. Then he said, سَوَاءٌ قَدَرَ عَلَى طَاهِرٍ بِيَقِينٍ. You can go ahead and make ijtihad. And at times it becomes wajib for you to make ijtihad, whether you have access to clean water or not. فَإِن تَحَيَّرَ. If he's confused and he cannot determine which is clean and what is filthy, and there's no sign indicating that this was the one the dog drank from or this was the one the dog drank from, what he should then do is أراقهما. He should pour both out. Or he can mix the two, if mixing the two together will reach more than 2 kullas. If these both reach more than 2 kullas and then no smell, khalas, no problem. And then he should perform tayammum if he has no other what? No other water to use. No. And also you should then perform tayammum and make salah, and there will be no need for him to make i'adah. Why is there no need to make i'adah? Because the assumption here is he has no water. And the person who has no water makes tayammum. When he makes tayammum, he performs salah, and there's no need for him to repeat his salah. وَالْأَعْمَى يَجْتَهِدْ. The blind person will also make ijtihad. If he's confused, then he may make taqleed of someone that can see. So someone that can see tells him, this is the clean one, the other one is not. Now, then he speaks about another possibility, another example over here. If clean water is confused with rose water, then there is still a way for you to make wudu. Even if you can't determine what is clean and what is rose. How? You make wudu with each jug once. Now there's technically a problem over there. Let's assume if I made wudu first out of the rose water, which is not valid for wudu, and then I make another wudu from my clean water. Then in my niyyah there's ittirab, there's taraddud. A condition for your niyyah in wudu and other ibadat is I can't have taraddud. If I'm uncertain, do I have wudu, don't I have wudu, and then I make up wudu uncertain whether I have or don't have, my wudu is not valid because there was taraddud in my niyyah. I can't have taraddud in my niyyah. So here he's saying clean water, yani ma mutlaq tahur, another jug ma ward, what should I do? He says make wudu from each. But how can I make wudu from each? Remember, I can't make ijtihad for wudu over there, because for me to make ijtihad, both water must be suitable for tathir. Here one was ma ward, here was one ma tahur. I can't make ijtihad. So what must I do? I make with both. And then here the jurists, they said, you will be excused from having taraddud in his niyyah. You'll be excused from having taraddud in his niyyah in this particular instance. But there was something else that he mentioned in Sharh Habiyah, I can't remember now. So the reason why, I remember I didn't answer this question easily. The reason why both need to be, I said that the default is that both should be suitable for tahara, and if both are not suitable for tahara, you cannot make ijtihad. The reason is that the jurists explained this to mean that, let's say I make ijtihad that jug A is the clean water, najasa didn't fall in jug A. My ijtihad only strengthens my belief that I can make wudu with this water. So the water must have been originally clean. If the water wasn't originally clean, my ijtihad is not going to strengthen my belief that I can use this water. So if one of them was urine from the beginning, I can't use any or make ijtihad, because my ijtihad can only make taqwiyatu kawniha mutahiran. Amma idha, as if one of them wasn't pure aslan, فلا يقوم يعني لا يعتبر مطهرا أصلا. There was another masala, I can't find it now, I was looking for it now. So وَلَوْ اشْتَبَهَ طَهُورِ الْمَوَلِ, that's how you should perform wudu. There was a kayfiyya that I was looking for. They say that to come out of the taraddud in your niyyah, because even though we said it's overlooked, there's a way to come out of that taraddud. So I think they say you take one hand from jug A, one hand from jug B, right? Then you make the niyyah for wudu, and then you wash your face with this hand, and then you wash your face with this hand. So one washing must be with a clean water. So there's no taraddud. I know definitely one of those washings was right, and then I complete my wudu with jug A and I complete my wudu with jug B thereafter, and that way I can avoid having any taraddud in my niyyah. And then the last example is, if I have clean water that is mixed with urine, then araqahuma, I throw it out, or I can mix them if they're going to reach 2 kullas. What tayammum, and then I perform tayammum, and I will not have to make i'adah again. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. Tamam, I'm turning now to my chat. I don't know if any of, mashallah, the chat is also quiet today. The students seem to be mashallah, asking less and less questions. Barakallahu feekum. Not quite, Sheikh Mustafa. Sidi Mustafa is asking, not quite, Sheikh. It sounds like ijtihad is being made all the time. You still need to make a determination at first glance, correct? I'm assuming you're speaking about now what the 2 jugs. I'm not too sure what Sidi Mustafa is referring to over there. But does anyone have questions before we conclude, inshallah? Now, so when we say that the jawaz ijtihad, meaning it's permissible for you to go and make ijtihad, means that you can use traces of this or that in trying to determine what jug is free of najasa and what is not, and your ijtihad will be valid, and you can make wudu and your wudu will consider to be valid, right? In the case where one was bowl, urine, and the other was tahur, ma tahur, then you cannot make ijtihad. You cannot make ijtihad, and there is no ijtihad in that, right? Wallahu a'lam. It sounds like I'm making ijtihad to see if I can make ijtihad. Wallahu alam, Sayyidi. I think the idea is not to make ijtihad to determine whether one was urine or not. You know that one was urine and one was clean, but they mushtabi. And since I knew that one was urine, I cannot make ijtihad in determining which one the najasa fell in or not. Ustad, the water we use mixed with camphor for ghusl mayit, what is our ruling to it? Sidi Luqman, the way we do our ghusls locally, as far as I can recall, is that especially the first washing, we usually don't have any camphor added to the water, and the camphor is only used in succeeding washings, or sometimes the camphor is just wiped on the body afterwards. I'm not too sure what methods is used where. Wallahu alam. But I think when we get to janazah and we get to ghusl, we can look into that question in more detail, inshallah. If there's no questions, we need to conclude. Alhamdulillah, I'm very happy we reached the end of water. We had some lengthy, interesting discussions over here. However, when we meet again, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala, we will be beginning with what? فيما يجوز استعماله من الأواني وما لا يجوز. So we're looking at utensils when we meet moving forward, inshallah ta'ala. But of course, utensils brings about many other discussions. That I was asked some time ago whether I could hang a frame in my home that has a silver, what we call locally a rakam. I don't know if it was an Egyptian word or not, but an image with verses of the Quran or the like. If the frame is made out of silver, can I use such a frame? Yes or no? So there's a lot of things that happens within our homes that ties into this chapter that lies ahead. Allah make it possible for us to cover it in the near future. This, inshallah, we should cover in one lesson, and perhaps more, inshallah. Thereafter, we're looking at the siwak, and eventually we're going to start reaching the maqasid of tahara, which is going to be what? Al-hudu'u wal-ghuslu. What are the four maqasid of tahara? Al-hudu wal-ghusl wal-tayammum wa al-istinja. Al-istinja. And then the wasail al-tahara is, if you remind yourself these four maqasid and wasail, it covers the whole chapter. What we've spent now since we began, of course we covered the history and the rijal and the books and so forth and so on, but from our reading of the Umdah thus far, we covered the first wasila of the four wasail. The first wasila is ma. The second is turab, earth. The third is hajarul istinja, stones for istinja. And the fourth is dibagh tani. So we started with one of the wasilas. We're moving now, inshallah, it's very soon. We start with hudu and then ghusl and then tayammum and istinja, of course. I think, no, not istinja, I think izalatul najasa is the other maqsid. Inshallah, tabarakallah. Izalatul najasa and some, not istinja, izalatul najasa. So all in due time, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. I said in 1 month I'm going to have to revise our strategy to see whether we are covering enough work or not. We're not yet at a month. I think this is our third week. this may be our 3rd week. If it's class 8 and it's 2 a week, 2, 4, 6, 8. This is our 4th week. The taraddud in niyyah was not jaiz, but that was an exception. That was an exception where taraddud would be overlooked. Abu Hamad, I'm answering your question. Tamam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all, accept from all. Allah grant us understanding of His deen. Allah make us from the jurists of this ummah, from the fuqaha of this ummah, and may that be a sign that Allah desires good for us. May yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fi din. I want to remind you that many of the discussions that will be covering, may have covered and will be covering, you may not find it to be immediately relevant to you, but the discussions are important for us to develop an appreciation for fiqh and for our minds to develop in terms of understanding fiqh. Inshallah tabarak wa ta'ala. بهذه النوايا وما نوى سلفنا صالح وما سيد الحي عمر وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم الفاتحة. بسم الله. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.